Hi folks, I'm Hector Garcia, CPA and small business consultant. Today we're going to be talking about the PPP program and the loan forgiveness process. This video is being recorded and published on October 15th, 2020. And the reason why I'm stating the date is because one thing that has been for sure and consistent about this pandemic is everything is subject to change. I'm also mentioning October 15th because if you are a fellow colleague, tax preparer, accountant, I feel you. This has been the worst, the craziest tax season ever, and I feel your pain. Anyway, let's dive right into the PPP forgiveness process. We're going to split this video into three parts. One, I'm just going to quickly answer the most commonly asked questions I'm getting via email, social media, in the YouTube comments, so we can get those out of the way right away. Second, we're going to talk about the type of forgiveness forms. There's three forgiveness forms available. The 3508 form, which is actually a one-page application. If you had a choice, this would be the one that you want to fill out. There's actually no math on this form. It's just you certifying and attesting to certain things on the form. We'll discuss that with a little bit more detail. The second form is the 3508 Easy. Again, if you had a choice, you prefer this one over the regular 3508. There's going to be some minor math. This is actually a two-page application, so there's going to be a little bit of math on this page, and then some certifications that you make as well. And lastly, we have the original 3508 form, which is a 5-page PDF in which there's some extensive math. And on top of that, there's some worksheets that you have to kind of build on the side to create the calculations that you need for this one. Of course, this is the one that most people dread, but depending on your business, we will discuss which ones you need to fill out. So we're going to talk about all three of these forms and answer your questions about which one should you be filing when it's time for you to do it. And the third piece, I'm just going to mention a couple of additional resources for you to learn PPP in depth. Of course, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, click on that notification bell to get notified when I create updated videos of all sorts. Let's start with the frequently asked questions. So it's going to be 5 frequently asked questions. The first one that I'm getting a lot is, can I still get access to PPP funds? Or if I already got PPP, can I get access to a second round of funding? And the answer is no. As of October 15th, the PPP program has already been closed for a couple of months. And if you have not applied yet, or if you didn't apply by August 8th, I believe was the deadline, there's no way for you to access PPP funds. There has been talks in Congress about a second round of PPP funding. There has been inclusion to that in certain bills, but it has not passed into law. It has not passed the Senate, has not been signed by the president. One little thing I'll mention is all of the talks and negotiations around a potential second round of PPP funds is focused on the smaller businesses and the ones that were most hurt by the pandemic. So there might be some specific requirements in terms of only being available for businesses that have had a reduction in sales of at least 25% or 50%. So we'll see what happens. Of course, if something passes, you will get an update from me. So that's question number 1. Question number 2 is, will the EIDL loan be forgivable, or will it ever be? The answer of it ever being, I would say I can't answer that. But as far as the intent of the EIDL loan, the answer is no. It's supposed to be a 30-year loan, and every person's going to have to pay that back. Could something change? Could a politician or a bunch of politicians have a change of heart? That could happen. But as a taxpayer, I would prefer not, because the agreement it's a 30-year loan, extremely flexible terms. I wouldn't be personally, as an American and a patriotic American, be pushing to have Congress also write off these loans. The PPP program is generous enough, in my opinion. Question number 3 is, if I received an EIDL advance, aka the EIDL grant, will my PPP forgiveness be affected? The answer is a resounding yes. Some people seem to be confused about this. There's absolutely no confusion. If you received an EIDL grant, which is $1,000 and $1,000 increments up to $10,000 based on what you told the government you had in terms of number of employees. If you received that $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, $10,000 grant or advance in which you didn't sign any documents for, that is going to reduce one-to-one your PPP forgiveness. So if you got a PPP loan of, let's say, $50,000 and it gets completely forgiven, but you also had received an $8,000 EIDL advance, the net forgiveness amount will go down to $48,000, and you're going to have to pay that $8,000 back through your bank. Now, the fourth question is, where do I send my forgiveness application to? I filled out the 3508 form. Where do I send that to? The answer is that goes back to the same bank that gave you the loan in the first place. This doesn't go to the government. This doesn't go to the IRS. You have to submit it through your bank. Now, most banks that I've dealt with to date are not accepting the applications yet. They're communicating with people and telling people, hey, get ready for it, and there will be a portal soon. But I haven't actually seen a portal to do this with. Now, I suspect that if you submitted your PPP loan electronically, that means you didn't have to fill out a manual form, your bank will probably also require you to submit the forgiveness form electronically. So don't expect to fill out the actual form from the SBA. We are going to talk about those forms because they contain all the information you would have to have handy in order to apply. And those bank forms should mimic the PDF that the Treasury have given us as a guide. But there's no guarantee that your bank will accept just the PDF application. They might require you to transcribe that into a portal of some sort. However, I'm sure there'll be some smaller banks that will accept the actual paper application. Frequently asked question number 5 is, how do I know which form, the 3508, the 3508EZ, or the 35S, am I supposed to file? Which is a great segue to discussing each of the forms. So let's talk about the general forgiveness rules that everybody needs to know. If you don't know this, you really can't move forward with the PPP forgiveness program. So number 1, you must spend the money. So you got the PPP funds, you have to spend the money. You have to spend at least 60% on payroll, on W-2 employees, and at most in non-payroll. Non-payroll is utilities, rent, and some interest that you can use for that. I'm going to put a link to a different video where I talk about that in more detail and also talk about the math behind that as well. But generally speaking, you would spend all the money in payroll or at least 60% in payroll and at most 40% in non-payroll. Second rule is the money must be spent during the covered period, which is 24 weeks after you get funding. So it doesn't matter if you spent it all in 8 weeks or in 10 weeks or in 6 weeks. It doesn't really matter. As long as it's all spent within the 24 weeks, you will be fine. And it could be the last week of the 24 weeks. It doesn't matter when. You have to spend the whole thing during the 24 weeks. Now, one of the caveats to this is you should not have a reduction on FTE. That means full-time employee equivalent. So you should not have less employees after you got the money than before you got the money. The idea is the opposite, is that you're hiring people back or keeping people in staff. Also, you shouldn't reduce their wages. If you have an FTE reduction or a wage reduction, the forgiveness amount will be adjusted down. In a different video, I talk about the math of this, but this is a general concept that you should know. Now, when should you be doing the application for forgiveness? You have a whole 10 months after the 24 covered period ends. Now, a place of confusion, a lot of people are freaking out because they're looking at the form, the forgiveness form, and it says expiration date 10/31. So people are freaking out thinking that the last date to apply for forgiveness is 10/31/2020. That's not true. People are just confused about that because I think Treasury made it confusing to put an expiration date on a form. I honestly don't know why they put an expiration date on the form in the first place. Maybe that's to cover their tracks in one way or the other. I really don't know. But 10/31 is not a significant date on the PPP program at all. It means absolutely nothing. You have 10 months after the 24 weeks have passed from funding date. So that's roughly about 15 months from funding date. So you have plenty of time to submit your PPP application, your forgiveness application. If you do wait after the 10 months, after the 24-week period, you might lose out and have to pay the whole loan back. So you definitely got to do it within that period. Now, the bank is going to receive the PPP forgiveness application from you. Some banks will require additional documents. Some banks will review it. Once the bank has approved it, they're going to send it to this SBA. The SBA will electronically come back and say approved and tell the bank how much money has been approved for forgiveness, and the amount that is not forgiven, you have to pay it back to that bank, either within the 2-year, if it was a 2-year loan, you will have a couple months left or whatever, whenever you apply. Or if you have a 5-year loan, you will have whatever is left of the loan if it was a 5-year loan. All the loans before June 5th were 2-year loans. Most of the loans after June 5th were 5-year loans. That's just how it happened. And lastly, as I mentioned earlier, the EIDL grant will reduce that net forgiveness amount, but it should be adjusted by the SBA when that forgiveness application comes back to your bank. So those are the general rules. You must know and understand that, or possibly memorize that, in order for you to be able to move forward with talking about the specific forms. So there's 3 forms, as we mentioned earlier. The easiest one, the best one, the fastest one, the one that everybody's going to want to do is the 3508S form. Now, that's going to be for all loans that have 2 conditions. One, the loan must be under $50,000 or up to $50,000, and you must have spent the money in payroll. As we mentioned earlier, you must have spent the money. You will be certifying that you spent the money. Now, let's talk about the form real quick. Let's open up that form. So in that form, you're going to put your business legal name, trade name, tax ID, phone number, business address, all simple stuff. The PPP loan number, that number you can get from your bank. That's the actual loan number attached to that loan. The PPP loan amount, that's how much money you have received. Employees at the time of the application. This number is not really extremely important. It's just a sort of a statistical number. But even if you have a reduction with the 3508 form, specifically the S form, if you have a reduction, there's no penalty for forgiveness. So basically, the 3508 form for everybody with a loan up to $50,000 is going to allow you to take a reduction, a forgiveness, full forgiveness, as long as you spent the money. And it doesn't matter if you actually had a reduction in employees. So you will put that number, you will put those 2 numbers in there. That's not your FTE calculation, that's just a number. And it doesn't matter what you put there with the 3508S form. With the S form, you're going to get automatic forgiveness as long as you spend the money. Then the EIDL advance amount, this is the grant that we were talking about. You must put that in there. The EIDL application number. So if you don't know what your application number is tied to your grant, or your EIDL grant, you may have to call the SBA and get that. Your bank is not going to know what that is. And the forgiveness amount should be the loan amount. So let's say, for example, the loan amount was $50,000 and the forgiveness, the EIDL amount advance was $8,000. So the forgiveness amount here should be $42,000. Now you could try to trick the bank and put 0 there and not put that in there, but that you could be hit with perjury issues. So you obviously don't want to trick the bank. And also the SBA should catch it at the end. Hopefully they do. Now, right here it says these are the things that you have to certify. So here you certify, number 1, that I spent all the money. This is basically what it says. I spent all the money, all the PPP money. And also, if I was self-employed, there's limitations of what the individual amounts per self-employed would be. So that's stated in there. The maximum amount you can deduct is 2.5 months worth of your average salary of 2019 for self-employed, which is the exact same dollar amount that they gave to self-employed people. So basically, that's automatic forgiveness. It doesn't matter if self-employed people pay themselves or not. So long story short, if you are a self-employed individual, single member LLC, someone with a business that didn't have employees, that got a PPP loan, and the amount was probably no more than $20,833, this is the application for you. And all you have to do is certify that all these things are true, put your initials all the way down there and sign. So basically, if you have a loan for $50,000 or less, and you spend all the money, you get automatic forgiveness. If you're self-employed with no employees, you should get automatic forgiveness, assuming the bank gave you the right amount. If the bank gave you more, then you might need to use a different form because these things might not cover. So obviously, that's what you want. You want the 3508 form if you qualify. The next one is the 3508 easy form, and that would be for all loans over $50,000 that do not have an FTE or a wage reduction, and asterisk, or qualifies for one of the exemptions. So let's talk about that. This is the 3508 easy form. There is some math here, right? So you're going to have to enter your covered period date range. So it's a little bit different than the S form. You're going to have to enter your payroll cycle, whether weekly, bi-weekly, or monthly. You are going to have to put here what your total payroll cost is. So let's say that was $40,000, and then what your rent and the utilities was. So let's say that was $10,000. We'll put here $5,000 for utilities. That is going to give you a total tally that you're going to sign up. So let's say that's $55,000. Then you're going to put the loan amount here. Let's say the loan amount was $70,000. And then you're going to do a calculation where you're going to take the payroll cost and divide it by 0.60. So that would be 40,000 divided by 0.60. And that would be 666,666,667, right? So basically, this is the total amount that you would love to get forgiven. This is the total loan amount that you received. This is your payroll divided by 0.60. So now you're going to enter the smallest of the three, which in this case is 666.67. And then the difference between the money you received, which is 70,000, and this would be the amount you would have to pay back. So under the easy form, you still have to do this calculation. Now, in addition, you will notice that there isn't a place where you put FTE or salary reduction. You would just certify in here somewhere in the certifications, you would certify that you didn't have an FTE reduction, which is going to be here in one of these two in the bottom right here. So right here, the borrower did not reduce number of employees and average amount paid, or it qualifies, the second one, it qualifies for one of those exemptions. Obviously, you want to read that to see if you would qualify for that exemption. That FTE and wage reduction is a calculation that you have to make outside of this form. And then as long as there isn't a reduction, you can certify this, right? And I have another video, I'll put a link to that, where I explain the type of calculations you would have to do for FTE and wage reduction. So that's the second form. Again, most people are going to want to do that form, and it's going to be assumed that you do not have that FTE wage reduction or qualifies for the exemptions to those things. And then lastly, we have the big form, the one that everybody's dreading, which is a 3508 form, which is going to be for all other cases. This is a 5-page PDF. The initial calculation here is similar. However, if you have a FTE reduction, you're going to have this thing called the quotient, which is basically a proportionate reduction of your forgiveness based on the FTE reduction. So let's say that you make this big calculation and you figure out how many full-time employees you had when you got the loan, or on February 15, 2020, and then at the end of the cover period, and they say the number turns out to be 0.9. Now, 0.9 would be you had 10 employees and you ended up with 9. Let's say that's the simple formula. You will end up with a 0.9 there, and then basically you will reduce your forgiveness amount by that, your forgivable amount by that 0.9, so that reduces 10% of your forgivable amount for the payroll portion if that happens. And this could happen also if there's a wage reduction. So there's both a salary reduction calculation and an FTE reduction calculation. I'm not going to get into the math of that. That's just a lot, and I didn't want to cover that in this particular video. Again, I'll put a link in the description to a video where I explain that with a little bit more detail. Now, in the same form, you go through the same certifications as before, but there's some additional schedules in where you're going to do the math for the FTE reduction, and you're going to do the math for the wage salary reduction. And you're also going to disclose the specific employees by name, what they got paid, what the total amount is, their hours, their salaries. You have to do that. And there's only like a couple of lines here, maybe 6 or 7 lines here, and then 4 lines for like owners in this case. So if you can't fit everything there, you have to have a separate spreadsheet per se to have display the rest of the information, and you have to go through all these additional calculations. Again, I wasn't going to cover the calculations as the boring part, but at least you know, based on your situation, which of the three forms you're going to want. So of course, under 50,000 and you spend all the money, 3508, beautiful, automatic forgiveness. If you didn't have FTE reduction, you don't have to show your math. You should still do it. You go with the easy form. If there's a reduction or all other cases, you got to go with the big 3508 form. So where can you get additional resources to learn about the PPP program and the forgiveness? Well, one is going to be the Treasury Cares Act website. There's the link. I'll put the link in the description. This is going to be this page that you're seeing here. Everything is here. Even statistics are pretty interesting. Even statistics are here. So if I'm going to open the statistics and show you one interesting statistic. So we have 5.2 million loans that were given out for $525 billion. Now, if you go down here to the loan size, let's go down here to the loan size. Where are we? Right here. See, 3.5 million loans were under $50,000, which is approximately 68% of the loan. So with this 3508 new form, this express form for reduction, the SBA is going to reduce a lot of their work because 70% of their loans will go through almost an automatic forgiveness process, assuming you spent the money, or most people spent their money, which is likely to be the case. So that's why they did that, because by having that easier process for $50,000 loans and below, they get rid of 70% of their work, which is probably a good thing anyway, because this whole thing is going to be so expensive to take care of in terms of government spending. Now, even though it's 70% of the loan count, is only 12% of the dollar amount, right? Because the bulk of the dollar amount is on the bigger loans, obviously. And the second one is my June update. It's a 1-hour video. It's similar to this one, but in this one, I actually do some math. So I kind of show you what that looks like. So I actually do some examples, specific examples to what would happen if this is the math and how that affects your forgiveness at the end. So I recommend that video if you want to learn a little bit more in depth. It has 33,000 views to date and 700 likes. So it's a pretty popular one. You definitely want to check that out. And finally, I'm actually going to hold a webinar, a $300 paid webinar on October 23rd. That is also scheduled for December 16th, just in case October 23rd doesn't happen. And this is the thing. I've been trying to do this webinar for a long time, and I keep pushing it and rescheduling it because the banks have not accepted any forgiveness loans. And I wanted to do a couple for my clients. I've done like 50 or 60 loans myself, helping my clients get that. So I'm going to do plenty of forgiveness applications. And I was going to take all those examples, a couple of those examples, obviously remove the customer names and show you exactly how I did those forgiveness applications. So that's the purpose of that October 23rd webinar. However, I have a feeling that October 23rd, the banks will not be ready. So I'm having a second tentative date, which is December 16th. And the reason why it's so far apart is because after October 23rd, if the banks are not ready, they're not going to be ready until after election. And December 14th is officially when the Electoral College chooses the president, even though November 3rd is when people actually vote. So if there's any turbulence with the voting system and it's a contested election, trust me, banks are not going to be randomly getting their forgiveness process set up, because it'll be a very turbulent time government-wise. So I'm kind of waiting until after that, December 16th. I think it would be a good day to do that. So if you want to join me on that webinar, which will likely be December 16th, there's the website, hectorgarcia.com/PPP. And if you use the coupon code from this video, which is Hector100, you'll get $100 off. So if you're an accountant that will be doing this for multiple clients, and you will probably be charging for this, for $200, you can join my webinar, and it is an infomercial. I'm selling it. And I will show you how to do these applications the way I learned how to do them with my client. And if you are not going to attend the webinar and you're going to do it yourself, I would always suggest that you try it yourself before paying a professional. However, if something feels wrong or you're not getting 100% forgiveness in your calculations, I recommend you hire a professional like a CPA or a tax attorney to help you do that for you. There's my email. If you have any additional questions, I hope this video was useful for you, that it was a good update. Again, check the description for all the relative links of the things that we talked about. And I hope that 70% of Americans that receive this loan go through this quick forgiveness process, and the other 30% can quickly get done with the PPP so they can move on to bigger and better things and concentrate on grow their business. I know this has been looming and worried a lot of people. For now, just kind of chill, relax. You got 24 weeks from funding plus 10 months to ask for this. There's no reason to rush it, and it's politics, right? So a lot of things might change depending on who wins. They might change this program. They might give more, give less. Who knows? I mean, right now it's just very turbulent times, and so far so good in terms of the rules that have come out. We just got that missing link, waiting for the banks to allow us to do that. So again, join the webinar or not. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, and add any comments below if you have any questions. There's my email. If you have additional questions, general questions, I can't really get into the details, via email. But if you have a general question, something I didn't cover, I will try to answer that. Anyway, thank you very much, and I'll see you on the next one.